Well-behaved women rarely make history. Those words became a pop culture slogan in the late 70s with the women of the feminist movement, and it was used in the context of women who break the rules and break the mold will make history. It was used as an excuse to do just that. But that's not at all how the original author meant it. Laurel Thatcher Ulrich was instead imploring people to stop looking at the exceptional women in history and to look at the women all around us, day in and day out. She said that well-behaved women do make history, but that we are just looking at the wrong places. Ulrich has made a career out of looking for women's history in diaries, court records, newspaper articles beyond the front page, quilts, needlework, household economies, etc., and demonstrating how that history relates to a broader dialogue. Do women not raise the next generation, teach the next generation, birth the next generation? Those well-behaved women that work hard every day to put food on the table may not be making it into history books, but they are in fact creating history. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is Sunday, it is Mother's Day, and I am shooting this video in honor of all the moms. My baby is napping right now, and so I want to get started right away. This video is not necessarily about mothers, but again about those women in history that may have been forgotten. We all know men built the world, at least that's what we're told anyway. The pyramids, the aqueducts, the bridges, the skyscrapers, the space shuttles. And look, I'm not denying that men have done incredible things. What I'm saying is that women have too, just in different ways. And we rarely hear about it. My dad is a civil engineer. Several of his brothers are as well. My grandfather was an engineer. A lot of their lives was spent on construction sites with 100% men construction workers. I won't deny that. I won't deny that for men. I would never take that away from them. But recently I got into a little discussion on Twitter, a very civil back and forth. The person in question said that women only started contributing in modern times, specifically to the workforce. Although I have a feeling that he also meant in other ways as well. His idea was that we really should go back to how it was done for hundreds of thousands of years. Seamstresses, midwives, candle makers, textile workers, etc. Apparently, those don't count. What would happen if we went back? And also, go back to what? Exactly. Is there a place to go back to? Or are we imagining something that never existed, where women lounged and men did all the work, with no support to advance society? I understand the negatives of the feminist narrative, believe me, I do. A lot of the times, the feminist narrative seeks to turn women into men, or at least it seems that way, to erase the differences that exist, to diminish the feminine. But is the online reaction much better? One that oftentimes refuses to acknowledge the need for women's role, except for reproduction. And sometimes they'll even say robots will soon replace that as well. I really believe that some of these people honestly would if they could, just like some feminists would. Both sides seemingly either trying to erase or undermine the feminine. There's an example in our modern times where women took the day off, both from paid and unpaid jobs. And what ensued was chaos, and we can talk about that in a minute. The idea that women were not working before the 20th century is absolute lies. It is a weird, persistent cultural myth. Not to mention that we often forget that those who stayed home, they certainly were not just lounging around, but contributing to the family in a way that allowed the husband to work while their child was being cared for. Spinners, merchants, farmers, scribes, midwives, brewers, nurses, chambermaids, governesses, etc. Not to mention the fact that, especially before the Industrial Revolution, married men and women often formed a little economic unit where both of them were working side by side in home-based businesses or trades. The 1950s baby boom, stay-at-home moms situation could be argued was very much a modern invention, a modern arrangement, not traditional, and it also seems to have thwarted a lot of people's perception of history. Not only did women do those jobs that I already mentioned, they oftentimes were the ones propping up economic systems by what they did at home. The care work, the food prep, textile production, etc. The big jobs that are visible to us would not have happened if first the children and the elderly were not cared for, the food was not gathered and prepped, and the clothes was not made. But these roles get dismissed. They get relegated into optional category because they were behind the scenes. People often forget about them. There's a quote you probably heard before. It goes, "Well-behaved women rarely make history." Used to encourage rebellion, to be loud, to be disruptive. But the origin of the quote is actually the opposite. Laurel Thatcher Ulrich was saying that well-behaved women do shape history, but in quiet ways that often go unnoticed and unrecognized. Let me tell you about a day in Iceland a few decades ago where the well-behaved women of Iceland decided to take the day off, and really take the day off. In 1975, on what is known as the Women's Days Off, over 90% of women in Iceland, which is already really remarkable, refused to work that day. Women of all ages, not just paid work, all work. I'm talking all work. No cooking, no cleaning, no childcare, no support tasks, no secretarial work, nothing. It was total withdrawal. They did this because back then, women earned less, they had limited political representation, and what they did on a daily basis, their jobs and their labor often went unrecognized by wider society. So the fact that 90% of the women participated, this must have been really felt by half of the population. Their goal was to demonstrate that what they were doing was actually crucial to the rest of society's functioning, and to challenge the myth that their contributions were secondary or even optional. And by the way, this wasn't a surprise. Menu was coming. They got ready. They thought things would continue without a hitch, that no major disruptions would happen. But really, the country basically ground to a halt. Most schools closed or barely functioned. Most of the staff and teachers were women. Banks, stores, factories, and offices could not function. Fathers had to bring their kids to work or stay at home altogether. And funny fact, grocery stores ran out of sausages because apparently, overwhelmingly, that is what men were comfortable or even knew how to cook in the first place. Newspapers and radio reports described the day as chaotic, but also very eye-opening. And the fact that it's only one day, kind of crazy. Imagine what would have happened in 1 week. The aftermath of the day off was that it shifted public opinion dramatically. Many Icelandic men actually admitted that they truly were not aware of how much women did. In one day, the collective action served to shift policy, culture, and history. So, going back to what I was discussing with my Twitter person, back and forth. I do think that when women decide to have children, the best thing to do for those children is to stay home with them, to raise them yourself, at least for the first few years. Now, that might not be the best for your career, but it's the best for the children. I don't think daycare is what is best for children because of how little one-on-one attention the children get, and how often daycare workers leave, leaving the child to constantly feel broken attachment from adults. Now, this isn't black and white. There is the option to do part-time work from home, etc., with a family member, hopefully to fill in the gaps, maybe grandma, which I think is kind of wonderful. Personally, I think having a close relationship with grandparents is a gift to children and to grandparents as well. It's too bad many societies nowadays, especially in modern societies in the West, have very atomized societies. Latin America might be the exception to this. And these societies often end up neglecting their extended families, which is another topic in it of itself. Now, on the other side though, I will recognize that for a lot of people, this is just not a reality. Both the man and the woman have to work to support the family, thereby relying on childcare for their children. I actually heard someone explain that if daycare was not catering to everyone, I believe it was Erica Commissar, which she talks a lot about this issue. If daycare was only catering to those who truly needed it, there would not be a surplus of children in daycares, and the quality would likely be better. I found that very interesting and it stuck with me. And again, it doesn't need to be black and white. It is absurd to bar a whole gender from working. It has not happened in history, at least not totally. Not to mention, again, male-dominated sectors were never fully just men. They were supported by well-paid women a lot of the time. The forgotten women of history. The oversimplified take I see online, on Twitter, YouTube comments, etc., the manosphere, it used to disparage women is, with the quote, men built the world. We can also say women birthed humanity. But that's a whole other back and forth that we don't want to get into. Yes, men were often invisible roles, like engineers, builders, etc. I come from a family of engineers, and I have deep admiration for those men in my family. I never, ever heard them use their profession or that phrase to disparage the women in their family. Me, my mother, my grandmother, or anyone really. We would do well to remember that first and foremost, most men today are not building stuff, building the world, other than, Excel worksheets. At least in the wealthy nations, and that while that was happening, while the building was being done, someone was cooking the meals, making the clothes, having the children, raising the workers, teaching the kids, and mending wounds. The world was not just built, it has been held together, and oftentimes a people history has forgotten. A lot of mothers have become irrelevant in the story. So, again, I'm dedicating this video to women out there, to mothers, and to remind you all that this should not be a competition. We should be working together, not against each other, and be wary of people making content online that is trying to pit men and women apart and against each other. All right? Cheers, and see you next time.